You're listening to Lead Through Strengths, where you'll learn to apply your greatest strengths at work. I'm your host, Lisa Cummings, and I'm always telling you, it's hard to find something more energizing than using your natural talents every day at work. Well, something that's just about as energizing as when I get to hang out with my other host here in the room, Tyann Osborne.
Hi.
Today, we are going to talk about being in a funk. So very often we go to strengths events, we get invited in to deliver training, and often it's from an inspirational standpoint.
Yeah.
It's, we want to get to know each other better. We want to communicate better. We want to get to know a new team.
Right. Team building, very positive, very fun.
And then the reality of the world is we have days when we don't, like Mojo Meter is level 0.
Right.
We have seasons, times, months, weeks where sometimes you're just in a funk. I've even, once I had an entire probably 6 months of a job where I was in a funk and I was like, what is wrong with me? I like the people. I like the job. I like the pay is good. Life is good. Everything on paper sounds so right.
And yet,
what is wrong? And almost never do people think, well, this would be a great opportunity to use my strengths. It just doesn't come up for people. But I know that you have ideas for this and you've talked about them being one of the best things you could do for yourself when you find yourself in a funk or you think someone else might be in a funk. So if you were going to even begin applying strength to this concept, what would you start with?
I think that's so true. And like Lisa said, often when we come in, we've done a big team building event, everyone's all jazzed up, this is exciting. And then you go back to your desk and work happens or life happens. And you're like, oh, that was fun. But meanwhile, now my customer's upset with me, my kid's upset with me, my spouse is upset with me, I have to make dinner, whatever it is. And life just happens. Or like she said, sometimes you can't really put your finger on it. And for whatever reason, you're just like, oh, I'm feeling like a funky monkey. I don't know why. That sounds more cute than you might actually be feeling.
Sounds like Brass Monkey. It makes me think of Beastie Boys.
Love Beastie Boys. That's my jam.
Funky monkey.
So I think it's really easy to use strengths when things are going well, but I think really a powerful application is when you're not feeling that great. And so what do? So I would say the first thing is be able to recognize when you are feeling funky. And sometimes we don't want to intellectually allow ourselves to even go there. Or like you said, you're like, I shouldn't be feeling bad about myself. I'm getting paid good money.
My thinking skills tell me that this does not make sense and therefore I must feel great.
This must be a first world problem because look at me, I have a job and on paper everything looks fine. And, I'm not hungry. I'm able to feed myself. I'm able to provide for me and whatever. And here's the deal.
You just feel like you're being a baby.
You feel like you're being a baby. And again, you might say like, oh, this is a first world problem. But here's the deal. Feelings are valid because they're your feelings. And if you're feeling funky, you don't have to explain that away to yourself. It's okay. It's okay. And nobody can discount your feelings because they're your feelings. It's okay. So I would say the first thing is just to put that baggage aside for I shouldn't be feeling this way, because that's the quickest way to really start some problems internally.
I think that let's break that piece down. Like you're saying, step one is just figure out that you're feeling like a funky monkey. And then what actually is it? Well, if our client base is representative of many more people in corporate, which I think they are.
Yeah.
Like if you're feeling wimpy about it or feeling like you're being a baby, it's easy to want to discard it or push past it pretty quickly, or to not really spend any time going, what is it actually?
Yeah.
Because when I ask people, well, what do you think you're really feeling about the situation? People will be like, well, I'm anxious about it. It's stressing me out. Mm-hmm. Those are the two. Yeah. I think they're the easy words. Mm-hmm. Stressed, anxious.
Yeah.
I don't know. You can tell me if you hear others the same, like
and
getting past it.
They're socially acceptable to say. What's not socially acceptable is to say, I'm scared. And, usually if someone's angry about something, almost always fear is underneath that. And anxiety, fear is almost always underneath that. And so when you peel it back, you're like, well, what's making you so stressed about that? Well, I'm afraid I'm not going to do a good job. You're like, okay. So what if you don't do a good job? And so you can kind of follow this line of thinking. You're like, well, if I don't do a good job, I'm going to get a bad performance review. I'm like, okay. Mm-hmm. So what if you get a bad performance review? Mm-hmm. Well, then, I'm not going to get a raise. I'm like, okay. So what if you don't get a raise? Well, then, this might happen. And we tend to have an irrational fear. And sometimes I call it like the bag lady fear, that you're going to end up as a bag lady, sort of pushing the shopping cart, living under the overpass.
This is a real fear. I had a situation once where I was, I took a wrong job. I took a job that was a bad fit for me.
By the way, this happens all the time. I have also done this.
Yes, and you've also written blog entries about the Mondays, the case of the Mondays that you could get, right?
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Right. Yours is more, yes. So,
but this happens.
Yes, this happens. So when I picked that role and I thought, I think that the answer is to leave, but then there was so much baggage hanging on to the leaving.
Yeah.
And so I was in a funk because I got myself stuck in a thought circle.
Right.
And we actually went through a process kind of like what you described. What is the worst that could happen there? And then what would happen there? Right. And then what would happen there? So I just played it out off of quitting. And what would happen? Oh, I would disappoint people because I put them through an interview process. And that seemed like, how could I do that to them? Mm. They went through this whole thing to pick me.
They would be mad at you.
Yes. I didn't want to be viewed unfavorably. I didn't want them to be angry with me. But I didn't want to be a jerk to them. Sure. I thought, what if I'm not giving it enough time?
Mm. What if you're a quitter?
What if I'm a quitter?
Ooh,
what if I am a poor decision maker?
You get branded with the scarlet Q that you have to wear around for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I mean, these are things. And then it was, okay, and then what? Let's say I quit. Well, normally I'm a planner. I think ahead. I think far ahead. I would have been deciding, what am I going to do next? And then I would get myself lined up for it. And then I would have it all lined up and I would have an acceleration lane all planned up. I didn't have any of that. So this would be all new territory. I decided, well, this would be a good time to start a business. So not this business, but it was a different one. But I was like, okay, what if I don't get any customers? What if I have no revenue? I
have to make a business plan. And now that's a huge project.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, we had just purchased this land that we wanted. That was the forever plan. What if I single-handedly ruined the forever plan because I took one wrong job?
Ooh, that's a lot of pressure.
But even when you go through the worst, when I realized I was really just being a chicken and that the worst that could happen, you know what we came to when we stayed up really late that night, just talking about, no, seriously, what is the worst?
Mm-hmm. What was it?
We were going to live in an RV and be camp hosts in a lovely state park. And it was like, oh, this is okay.
Which, by the way, I have not one, but multiple friends who are doing that right now.
On purpose.
That is their dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, that's a thing.
Yeah. And at the time, it was just like, well, we had an RV. So it literally wasn't something to purchase. It was just like, we take the thing that we have while we lost the house. Because remember, I lost the whole dream farm. Lost the farm.
It burned down overnight. Yeah.
I brought it crashing down.
In flames.
And then it was right there.
Yeah.
So the answer was there. I'm not saying it made it unscary, but that was a funk breaker. So I know it was a bit of a long story to support your point, but I was in a funk because I was stuck in a decision.
You were afraid.
Yeah.
It was fear.
Yeah.
But you knew the right thing to do.
I guess so.
You wanted to leave.
Yeah.
You were just afraid.
But we fight ourselves on that often. I know I do, and I know that a lot of customers do. Absolutely. And on many smaller things because, well, we work with plenty of people who are not in a funk because they're making self-actualizing giant life decisions. That does happen as well because you know who you are. If you're listening to the show and you've stayed after one of the sessions and you're like,
which we love, by the way.
Oh my God, this made me realize
I'm in the complete wrong job. Yeah.
But also it happens in the everyday mundane.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just I hear this a lot. And believe me, this is kind of what keeps coaches in business, is working with people who kind of get to even like the 40, 50 plus category, who are like, you know what, I've worked all this time and I've sort of made it. I've gotten to wherever it was in the career, in the company. I've gotten to whatever level job that I thought was the place I wanted to be. And kind of, is this all there is? Or like, I thought somehow I would be riding my unicorn to work and playing with puppies all day. And you know what? I don't like it. I don't like what I do, or I don't really like who I've become, or my kid drew a picture of the family and I'm not in it. What we've heard from a colleague of ours, or something else happens. This is why people have a midlife crisis or a complete breakdown, right? Talk about a funk. And that's something where that there's that little voice whispering in you of discontent, and you have shoved it down. And when you push that bad boy down, just like feelings, it is like your Jack in the Box analogy. That thing will shoot out in a very ugly and untimely way.
That's true. And it's like, once you've been shoving it down long enough, people know, they're like, I have the pit in my stomach. I know it's off, but I don't know what is off. I can't put my finger on it.
Right.
And then boom, the Jack in the Box jumps out.
Or people feel scared because I have set up my life now where now I have the big house, or I'm supporting my whole family, or whatever it is. And we kind of make it bigger in our head sometimes than it has to
I had
be.
one of those recently in a strength session. She said she called it her big kid bills. And she was like, I have the house, I have the car, I have the stuff, I have the everything. And I've got my mind all wrapped up in keeping with the Joneses. And she's like, all I want to do is just go buy a Honda Accord and live in a 1-bedroom apartment and unravel it all. Right. And I can't even do that.
So like, mo money, mo problems. And that's why I think there's such a pull right now for downsizing, for minimalism, for let's chuck it all and go live in that RV and go be the camp host. And there's a huge movement for that right now. Mm-hmm. Even in the design world, there's, minimalism is in, not Rococo is in.
I don't even know what that is.
The heavily layered look is out. So you see this, there's a real pull and desire for that. And so it's real, it's a thing, and it's okay to just sit back and think, I've worked, and maybe I've been the one pushing this, and I feel funky. I don't know if I want this.
So I'm your client.
Yeah.
We've been talking strengths.
Okay.
I do the Clifton Strength Assessment. I am, in fact, in a funk, and I did do my assessment. Mm-hmm. I know my top strengths. I think I'm going to talk to Ty as my coach. So I'm going to start to open up to the concept and kind of like talk through what's going on so I can figure it out, because I can't put my thumb on what is making the funky monkey situation happen.
Right.
So what do you do? Like, if you're in a corporate office, most of our customers are, and they're like living through the funk, and they've acknowledged the funk isn't going to go away in a one conversation sort of thing. This isn't a magic dust.
And I wish it was. Deal. I could charge a lot more.
No kidding. Poof, life is amazing.
For $20,000, I will solve your funkiness.
1 hour.
Shazam. Yeah, sadly, it's a little bit more of a process.
So I know, like, in one podcast episode, we can't end it and say, and here, either
is your 30-second easy answer.
Jerky if I'm like, go pay Ty $20,000 so she can get you the answer. That's not the most fun.
But there are some things you can do. Yeah. For sure.
So getting a coach is a great one. But what else? Like, what are you doing what actions can people take away when they're living through the funk? They're in the middle of it and they're getting to the other side.
So, one thing you said, getting a coach. So I would say, absolutely, I'm a huge fan of that. Not just because I'm a coach, because I believe it works. So if your company supports that, awesome. But if they don't, see if you can reach out to a trusted person, because often when you're in it, it can be really hard to see. You know what I mean? So it can be helpful to have a spirit guide, somebody to walk beside you on that. Mm-hmm. So that's if you can, put your hand up, and that takes being a little bit vulnerable, but it's okay to just say, you know what, I got to get some help here, because there's no prize for doing it hard and by yourself. Just a little clue to life here. And something too, that when you can pull out your strengths, and again, I realize when you're feeling funky, you might not be thinking strengths. I mean, that might not be it, but I encourage you, like, reach back in your desk and pull out that report. And there's going to be a piece in there about brings and needs that I really like. And, often when you first read it, you kind of blow through some of that. But oftentimes when we're feeling funky, it's because we have a need that's not being met. And each one of our strengths themes have a really specific thing that we need in order to feel fulfilled in that way. And so almost invariably, when I found myself in a funk, I can go back and like literally put my finger on the thing that I am not getting. And it is illuminating to be able to give language or a word to, oh my gosh, I thought it was just me. I am not getting this. This is what I need. And life isn't about putting your needs on a shelf and doing it, again, the hard way. You are at your best, and the world needs the best of you, not the most mediocre, funky version of you. That's not helpful to anyone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if they have the full 34 report, the version that you get the lesser themes at the bottom, you might look at the bottom 5 to 7, and you might notice, if you don't think of these as weaknesses, you think of these as potential energy drainers. Well, you look at that list and you might think, oh, right, look at that one. It's number 33 of 34. And I'm using that all day, every day. Right. It's taking a lot of me to give it. Yeah. Because you can be totally competent in those areas, by the way. If you're new to strengths, it can be at the bottom of your list in the stack rank of 34. You can get competent. You can do the thing. Right. But it's sucking it all out of you and you're empty, right, by giving it. And it can really make you feel funky if you're having to do that over time.
And, Gallup's got these engagement metrics that we talk about with our clients. And, the data shows that people who are able to use their strengths during the day, 6 times as likely to be engaged, right? 3 times as likely to have a better quality of life. And as I tell my clients, this doesn't mean I only get to work on fun stuff all day long that really, it's the Thailand. And that's not life. But what this, the research behind this shows is that something in my day brings me energy. And because it does, it lifts me up enough so that then I can get through that noise and deal with some of that stuff that might be pulling on my themes that are at the bottom of my stack. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's gas in the tank.
That's it.
Getting you back up there so you can get through the day doing the things that you're paid to do, even if you don't like those things.
That's just it. Because sometimes clients are like, oh, well, this means I don't have to do those other parts of my job I don't like. I'm like, yeah, no, it's still work. Now, if 100% of your job you don't like, that's something. But there needs to be something every day that kind of fills your tank, and then you can get through that other stuff. But I think that's where you can start to kind of put some analysis around the funk and then say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize 75% of my job is doing that thing that takes so much energy. I can do it because I'm smart. I'm competent. I mean, I got to this point. I can do it. I just don't want to. It takes so much of my energy. And then frankly, I don't even have enough energy left to do the things that do excite me, which then that becomes sad. I don't even have enough energy to play the drums. Or I found this happening with me. I love to read. That's kind of my thing. I found if I get in a funk, I'll stop reading. And that's when I've noticed that, man, something's really wrong with me because I love to read. So if I don't have enough energy to read.
Okay, we're into these analog tools in the list. This would be a good list. Like, can you remember back to times when you were in a funk and what might the signs be? Yeah. And some things like that. You stop reading. I might skip my drum practice for the day. I notice I let myself get a little disorganized. Like if my trash starts to overflow because I'm Mrs. Cleanly, I'm Mrs. Tidy is basically me. So I notice, if a couple of little signs, like my fingernails are very chipped and my trash is overflowing, I'm playing Tetris waiting for it to fall out. Yeah. I know I'm not in my normal game.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So kind of know that about yourself. Like, what are these little signs, little guideposts along the way so that you can pay attention to those before you get to sort of the edge of the cliff and you've fallen off?
Okay, this is good. We have to-dos for them. We have the,
Absolutely.
Okay, we've got lists to make.
Yeah.
What are your early warning signs, guideposts?
Absolutely. Raise your hand if you're feeling funky and see if you can get a spirit guide to help you out.
Yeah. And if you need a coach, Ty is really amazing. Someone who will be both. One thing I love about your style in this regard is, well, depth. Obviously, you get corporate, you get people's busy lives, but you're both empathetic and tough at the same time. Not empathy in the Gallup sense of the word, but like you feel the person for how they need to be seen and heard and appreciated in the moment. But then you can also tell the truth. You're not afraid of.
Well, I definitely have huge compassion for people because, especially with the clients we work with, I've been there. We've had these jobs. I have had the job where I felt like I had to be on 24/7. I've had the expat job where I literally felt like I was on 24/7 because I had a whole job on the other side of the world. And just when that job was ending, the US was coming online. I've had a job where I got 300 emails a day. I've had the job where you go into the ops review and you have to prepare a 75-page deck that you get yelled at about. We've lived this, right?
Yeah.
I've been in a place where you get promoted to a position that you're like, I don't want this. I don't want my boss's job. I don't want any of these jobs.
Why did I do this?
Why did I do this? But you know what? I've also had things that are great. And I'm just saying, life can be awesome and you have tremendous and powerful skills. And we just want to harness those so that we can unleash the best of you in the world, because that's what the world needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That is the perfect end to this. One thing I am going to put in the show notes for you is a link to, it's leadthroughstrengths.com/negative. And that is, there's one called /positive and there's one /negative. And it's a list of emotions. It's like an inventory of emotions. And so if one of your takeaways is coaching, great, bring on Ty. If you are more like, hey, I just need to DIY this right now, and I'm going to go back to the very beginning of this episode and do that thing where I'm trying to figure out, beyond saying I'm stressed or anxious, what's going on with me with this funk. Yeah. That list, it just gives you a whole different set of words to say, oh yeah, I think I'm just angry about this thing that got switched up on me at work. And I've just had the bee in my bonnet for a while, to use an old saying.
Yeah.
And that put me into a funk. So that will be a good resource as well if you have trouble naming it. And remember Ty's wisdom, I will call it, which is you don't have to look at these emotions and name these emotions so that you can go tell your boss you're feeling it. This is actually you just doing it so you can understand what is making the funk.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. And it could be, I've seen this before. You could be mad because you're not getting recognized. You're mad you worked on that project and frankly, somebody else got the credit for it. Or it just, all these things. And you might think, I can't say that out loud because that sounds really petty. Then someone's going to be like, but that's a valid feeling. That's totally valid. So I love that Lisa's, list can help spark that for you. So write that stuff down so you can help in your mind just get kind of granular on what specifically is it that's causing the funk. Because once we know and we can drill into that, then we can help start, building bridges to get over the funk.
Yeah. And you layer that with what you described about going back through your report and reading the needs. Yeah. And if you have the full report, looking at the very bottom, so you might see something that is a soul sucker for you that you didn't know. Yeah. You have a pretty good inventory either of, I've got my early warning signs, or, I've figured out what might have spurred this. Like that moment where you didn't get recognized, maybe you were annoyed for about 30 seconds and you're like, yeah, but I'm a grown up, so I'm over it. And then you move on, but you didn't get over it.
Right.
You just told yourself you did.
Right. Or maybe that's like the 5th time that's happened in this job. And it's just like, it's like you're being in your bonnet. It doesn't go away. It's there. And then every time that happens again, it's just that confirmation that's like, see, this is in here. And so, and frankly, maybe one of your themes is significance, and significance, maybe yours needs to be recognized. And so that's a really good starting point to think, what's going on here? And how can I put more Venn in this diagram than these things are totally opposite? So I think that's just a great place to start.
It is. And speaking of starts, we're stopping. So even though we're at the end of the episode, we always talk about how using your strengths will make you a stronger performer. And in this time, if you're listening to this, if you are in one of those moments where you are in a funk, don't forget that your strengths do strengthen your performance, because Absolutely. I think to Ty's point, it is not the first thing that comes to mind. But if you're experiencing the funk right now, you're feeling like the brass monkey, funky monkey, get over to your Clifton Strengths Report and get reflecting. Is that what you would call it?
Reflecting. Yeah. Go back and dig into those brings and needs. And I think you'll find some wisdom there.
All right. With that, we will see you next time. Bye for now.